Hey there, friends. Before we dive into this super fun story, I've got a quick question for you. Have you ever had a neighbor who was super nosy and acted like they were the boss of everyone? Like they're always peeking over the fence or telling you what to do? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from today. Oh, and if you love cool stories like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the excitement coming up next. It was a bright and sunny Saturday morning in a little place called Oakwood Heights. This was a quiet neighborhood, the kind where kids rode bikes down the street, dogs barked at squirrels, and everyone seemed to know what everyone else was up to. Well, almost everyone. There was one guy who was brand new to the block, and his name was Jake Carter. Jake was a super nice guy who loved all kinds of gadgets and techie stuff. He'd just moved into a cozy house with a big front yard, and he was so excited to make it his own. Now Jake had something really special that he brought with him, a fancy new smart fountain for his front yard. Oh man, this fountain was the coolest thing ever. It wasn't just any old fountain that squirted water and sat there looking boring. Nope, this one was like something from a movie. It sparkled in the sunlight, shooting water in fun patterns that danced around. Sometimes it even played soft music, like a little song to make you smile. And at night, that's when it got really awesome. The fountain lit up in all kinds of colors: red, blue, green, purple, like a rainbow you could watch forever. Jake thought it was the best thing he'd ever bought. He'd sit on his porch, sip some lemonade, and just grin at how cool his fountain looked. Jake wasn't trying to show off or anything. He just loved making things fun and bright. He figured his new neighbors would love the fountain too. I mean, who wouldn't like something so pretty and cheerful, right? But here's the thing, not everyone in Oakwood Heights was happy about Jake's fountain. Nope, not even a little bit. Someone was watching from across the street and they weren't smiling at all. Can you guess who it was? Go on, take a wild guess. Okay, let me tell you about this person. Her name was Karen Mitchell, and she was the president of the neighborhood's HOA. Now, if you don't know what an HOA is, it's like a group of people who make rules for the neighborhood to keep everything looking nice and tidy. Sounds okay, right? Well, Karen took her job way too seriously. She wasn't just someone who made rules, she acted like she was the queen of Oakwood Heights. Karen was the kind of person who always carried a clipboard scribbling notes about everything and everyone. If your grass was a tiny bit too long, she'd notice. If your mailbox was a little crooked, she'd write it down. And if you did something she didn't like, oh boy, you'd hear about it. Karen had a stare that could make you feel like you'd done something wrong, even if you hadn't. It was so sharp, it was like she could freeze a volcano with one look. Everyone in the neighborhood was a little scared of her. When she walked down the street, people would peek out their windows and whisper, "Uh-oh, Karen's coming." Nobody wanted to get on her bad side. But Jake, he didn't know about Karen yet. He was too busy setting up his fountain and dreaming about how cool his new home was going to be. See, Jake wasn't trying to cause any trouble. Not at all. He just wanted to settle into his new place and have some fun with his gadgets. He'd spent weeks picking out the perfect fountain, reading all about how it worked, and making sure it was just right for his yard. He even checked the neighborhood rules to make sure it was okay. Yup, Jake was super careful like that. He wasn't the kind of guy to break rules or make a mess. He just wanted to add a little sparkle to Oakwood Heights. But to Karen, that fountain was like a giant problem. The second she saw it, her eyes got all squinty and her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't see it as cool or fun. To her, it was a big, loud, shiny thing that didn't belong in her perfect neighborhood. Karen had a long list of neighborhood standards, which was just a fancy way of saying things Karen likes. And Jake's fountain, it was not on that list, not even close. She thought it was too bright, too noisy, too everything. In her mind, it was practically a crime. Every morning, Karen would stand on her porch, staring across the street at Jake's house. She'd clutch her clipboard so tight her knuckles turned white. "That fountain has to go," she'd mutter to herself. She didn't even try to talk to Jake about it nicely. Nope, she just decided right then and there that it was wrong and she was going to make sure everyone knew it. She started telling the neighbors, "Have you seen that awful thing in the new guy's yard? It's ruining our street." Some people nodded along because they didn't want to argue with her. Others just stayed quiet, not sure what to think. But here's the best part, and you're gonna love this. Karen had no idea who she was messing with. Jake wasn't just some random guy with a cool fountain. Oh no, he had a secret, a big one. It wasn't something he bragged about or told anyone, but it was there, tucked away like a hidden treasure. And that secret, it was about to make Karen's whole world flip upside down. What do you think it could be? Any guesses? Don't worry, I won't spill it yet, but let's just say Jake was a lot smarter than Karen thought. Jake had moved to Oakwood Heights for a fresh start. He'd lived in a big city before where he worked with computers and tech stuff all the time. He was really good at it, like really good. He could figure out almost anything with a keyboard and a screen, but he didn't talk about it much. He wasn't the kind of guy to show off or act like he was better than anyone else. He just liked solving problems and making cool things like his fountain. When he moved to this quiet little neighborhood, he thought it'd be a nice change. No big stress, no big fights, just him, his gadgets, and a chance to relax. The day he set up the fountain, Jake was so happy. He spent hours making sure it was perfect. He hooked it up to his phone so he could control it from anywhere. Want the water to spray high? Tap. Want it to glow blue? Tap. Want it to play a happy tune? Tap, tap. It was like his own little toy, and he couldn't wait to show it off. He even imagined inviting the neighbors over for a barbecue where they'd all laugh and watch the fountain do its tricks. That's the kind of guy Jake was, friendly, easygoing, and always ready to share a good time. But Karen, she didn't care about any of that. She didn't care that Jake was new or that he was trying to fit in. All she saw was that fountain, and it made her mad, really mad. She started making plans to get rid of it, and she wasn't going to be nice about it. She'd march over to Jake's house, knock on his door, and tell him all the things he was doing wrong. She'd wave her clipboard and point at her rule book, acting like she was in charge of the whole world. Jake, though, didn't get mad back. He'd just listen and nod, a little smile on his face. "Okay, Karen," he'd say, "I'll look into it." But inside, he was thinking something else. He wasn't worried about her clipboard or her rules. He'd already checked everything, and he knew he was fine. Plus, he had that secret we talked about. Every time Karen yelled at him, he'd think about it and smile a little bigger. It was like he knew something she didn't, and boy, was he right. The neighbors started to notice the drama. Some of them thought the fountain was kind of neat, but they were too nervous to say so. Karen had been running the HOA for years, and she had a way of making people do what she wanted. If you crossed her, she'd make your life tough. So most folks just stayed out of it. They'd wave at Jake when Karen wasn't looking, but they wouldn't stick up for him. Not yet, anyway. Jake didn't let it bother him. He'd wave back, tinker with his fountain, and go about his day. He knew Karen was up to something, but he wasn't scared. He was ready. That fountain wasn't just a pretty thing to look at, it was part of his plan, a plan that Karen didn't see coming. What do you think he was up to? Any ideas? All I'll say for now is that Jake was about to teach Karen a lesson she'd never forget. So there they were, Jake with his sparkling fountain and Karen with her grumpy clipboard. It was like a big game, and nobody knew how it was going to end. The neighborhood was buzzing with whispers, and everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Would Karen win and get her way, or would Jake and his fountain come out on top? Stick around, because this story's just getting started, and it's gonna be a wild ride. Karen Mitchell was not the kind of person who let things go. Nope, not at all. She was the boss of the HOA in Oakwood Heights, and she acted like she was in charge of everything. If something wasn't the way she wanted, she'd make sure everyone knew about it. And right now, the thing she hated most was Jake Carter's shiny new fountain. That sparkly, colorful fountain in his front yard. To Karen, it was like a giant problem that needed to be fixed, fast. Every single morning, Karen would put on her serious face, grab her clipboard, and march across the street to Jake's house. Her shoes clicked on the sidewalk, loud and sharp, like she was on a mission. She'd stand right in front of Jake's fountain, staring at it like it had done something mean to her. Then she'd pull out her phone and start snapping pictures, click, 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 like she was collecting proof for a big case. "This thing is awful," she'd shout so loud the whole neighborhood could hear. "It's an eyesore. You're breaking every rule we have." Jake, though, didn't get mad, not even a little bit. He'd just stand on his porch, sipping his coffee, and give Karen a friendly wave. "Morning, Karen," he'd say with a big smile. He wasn't scared or worried at all. Why? Because Jake was super smart. He'd read all the HOA rules not once but 2 whole times. He knew his fountain was totally okay. There was nothing in the rule book that said he couldn't have it, not one word, but Karen didn't care about that. To her, Jake was just the new guy who needed to learn how things worked around here. Karen wasn't going to stop with just yelling. Oh no, she had other plans. One day she started leaving notes on Jake's front door. Mean notes written in big angry letters. "Your fountain is tacky," one note said. "It's a disgrace to our neighborhood," said another. She even taped one to his mailbox that said, "Take this junk down now." Jake would find these notes and just shake his head, still smiling. He'd crumple them up and toss them in the trash, not letting them ruin his day. But inside, he was starting to wonder how far Karen would go. The neighbors saw all this happening, but they didn't say much. They'd peek out from behind their curtains, watching Karen stomp around and yell. Some of them thought the fountain was kind of cool with its music and pretty lights, but they were too nervous to tell Karen that. See, Karen had been in charge for a long time, and she had a way of making people afraid. If you didn't agree with her, she'd give you that icy stare or write your name on her clipboard. Nobody wanted to be on Karen's bad side, so they just stayed quiet. They whispered to each other when she wasn't around, saying things like, "Poor Jake, he's in trouble now." But Jake, he wasn't like everyone else. He wasn't scared of Karen's clipboard or her loud voice. He knew she was trying to boss him around, but he wasn't going to let her win. Instead of fighting back with shouts or mean words, Jake did something different. Late at night, when the neighborhood was dark and quiet, he'd go out to his fountain and work on it. He'd bring his toolbox and fiddle with the wires and buttons. He added a tiny camera to one side, so small you could barely see it. He put a sensor on the bottom that could tell if someone got too close. Why was he doing all this? Well, Jake wasn't as clueless as Karen thought. He had a plan, and he was waiting for just the right moment. What do you think he was up to? Got any guesses? Karen kept getting grumpier every day. She'd walk up and down the street, telling everyone who'd listen that Jake's fountain was ruining everything. "It's too bright," she'd complain. "It's too loud, it doesn't belong here." She even started making up stories. One day she told Mrs. Jenkins next door that the fountain was leaking water into her yard. That wasn't true at all, but Karen said it with such a serious face that Mrs. Jenkins believed her. Another time, she told Mr. Lopez that the fountain's music was keeping her awake at night. But everyone knew Karen's house was too far away to hear it. Still, she kept talking, and some neighbors started to wonder if maybe she was right. Jake heard all these stories, but he didn't let them bother him. He'd wave at Mrs. Jenkins and Mr. Lopez like nothing was wrong. "Nice day, isn't it?" he'd say, acting cheerful as ever, but deep down he was paying attention. He noticed how Karen's stories were getting bigger and wilder. He saw how she'd look over her shoulder when she thought no one was watching, like she was worried about something. It made Jake curious. Was Karen just mad about the fountain, or was there something else going on? He wasn't sure yet, but he was going to find out. One afternoon, Karen knocked on Jake's door harder than usual. Bang, bang, bang. Jake opened it, and there she was, holding her clipboard like it was a shield. "You need to get rid of that fountain right now," she said, her voice all sharp and pointy. "It's against the rules, and I'm not going to let you ruin our neighborhood." Jake just leaned against the doorframe, calm as could be. Karen, he said, I checked the rules. My fountain's fine. Maybe you should read them again. Karen's face turned red like a tomato about to pop. Don't you talk back to me, she snapped. I've been running this neighborhood for years. I know what's allowed. Then she turned and stormed off, muttering about how she'd fix this. Jake watched her go, his smile fading just a little. He wasn't afraid, but he knew Karen wasn't going to give up. She was planning something big, and he needed to be ready. That night, Jake sat in his living room thinking. He looked out the window at his fountain, glowing softly in the dark. The water danced, and the lights changed from blue to green to pink. It made him happy, but he knew it was more than just a pretty thing. It was part of his plan, a plan Karen didn't know about. He pulled out his phone and checked the camera he'd added to the fountain. Everything was working perfectly. Just you wait, Karen, he said quietly. This is going to be interesting. The neighborhood was starting to feel different. People were picking sides, even if they didn't say it out loud. A few neighbors, like little Tommy from down the street, thought Jake was awesome. Tommy would ride his bike by and shout, "Cool fountain, Jake." But others were listening to Karen, nodding when she talked about rules and standards. It was like a tug-of-war, with Jake on one side and Karen on the other. Everyone was waiting to see who'd win. Jake knew it wasn't just about the fountain anymore. It was about standing up to someone who thought they could boss everyone around. He wasn't going to let Karen push him out of his new home. He liked Oakwood Heights and he wanted to stay. So he kept tinkering, kept smiling, and kept waiting. Something was coming, something Karen didn't expect. What do you think it could be? One thing's for sure, Jake was ready, and this story was about to get even wilder. Weeks passed in Oakwood Heights, and things were getting more and more intense. Karen Mitchell, the HOA boss, wasn't giving up on her fight against Jake Carter's shiny fountain. If anything, she was getting louder and meaner. Every few days, she'd march right up to Jake's front door, her face all red and grumpy. Bang, 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 she'd knock so hard it sounded like she wanted to break the door down. "Jake," she'd yell, "you better tear down that awful fountain right now. It's ruining everything." One day, she got really wild. She stood on Jake's porch, waving her phone in the air like it was a sword. "I'm calling the city," she screamed. "They'll make you get rid of that thing." Jake just stood there, calm as ever, leaning against his door. He didn't yell back or get mad. "Go ahead, Karen," he said with a little smile. "Call whoever you want. I'm not breaking any laws." Karen huffed, turned around, and stomped away, muttering to herself. Jake watched her go, shaking his head. He wasn't worried at all. But things started to get a bit strange after that. Karen wasn't just yelling anymore. She was trying to turn the whole neighborhood against Jake. She'd walk up and down the street, knocking on doors and talking to anyone who'd listen. "That Jake is nothing but trouble," she'd say, pointing at his house. "His fountain is disturbing the peace. It's too loud, too bright, and it's making our neighborhood look bad." Some neighbors nodded along because they didn't want to argue with her. Others just listened quietly, not sure what to believe. Karen even started making up stories. One morning, she told Mrs. Thompson, who lived next to Jake, that the fountain was leaking water all over her yard. "It's ruining my flowers," Karen said, acting all upset, but that wasn't true at all. Jake's fountain was super high-tech and didn't leak a single drop. Another time, she told Mr. Patel down the street that the fountain's lights were so bright they kept her awake at night. "It's like living next to a disco," she complained. That was silly because Karen's house was way too far away to see the lights. Jake heard these stories and just laughed quietly to himself. He knew Karen was stretching the truth, but he didn't say anything. Not yet. The neighbors started acting different around Jake. Some of them who used to wave and say hi now gave him funny looks. They glance at his fountain and then quickly look away like they were afraid to get in trouble. A few stopped waving altogether, crossing the street when they saw Jake coming. It was like Karen's words were starting to sink in. Little Tommy, the kid who loved riding his bike past Jake's house, was still friendly. "I like your fountain," he'd shout, giving Jake a big thumbs up. But even Tommy's mom told him to stay quiet around Karen. Nobody wanted to make her mad. Jake noticed all of this, but he didn't let it get him down. He'd still sit on his porch, sipping lemonade and watching his fountain sparkle in the sun. He'd wave at anyone who passed by, even if they didn't wave back. But while he looked relaxed, Jake was paying close attention. He started to see something weird about Karen. She wasn't just mad anymore, she seemed nervous, really nervous. When she yelled at him, her hands would shake a little, like she was holding onto something heavy. Her eyes would dart around, checking to see if anyone was watching. It was like she was hiding something big. Jake tilted his head and thought, "What's got you so jumpy, Karen?" He didn't know yet, but he was going to find out. Jake wasn't just sitting around waiting for Karen to calm down. Nope, he was busy. Every night after the neighborhood went asleep, he'd sneak out to his fountain with his toolbox. He'd tinker with it, adding little things here and there. One night he put in a tiny camera, so small it looked like part of the fountain's design. Another night he added a sensor that could tell if someone got too close. He'd check everything on his phone, making sure it all worked just right. Why was he doing this? Well, Jake wasn't as new to this game as Karen thought. He had a plan, and it was starting to come together. What do you think he was getting ready for? Then one night, something big happened. Jake was sitting in his living room watching TV when his phone buzzed. It wasn't a text or a call, it was an alert from his fountain. That little camera he'd added, it had caught something strange. Jake grabbed his phone and opened the app, his eyes wide. The screen showed his front yard dark and quiet, with the fountain glowing softly. And there, sneaking around in the shadows, was Karen. She was tiptoeing across his lawn, looking over her shoulder like she didn't want to get caught. In her hand, she held a wrench, gripping it tight. Jake leaned closer to the screen, his heart beating a little faster. "What are you up to, Karen?" he whispered. Karen crept closer to the fountain, checking around one more time. She raised the wrench like she was about to hit something. Was she going to break the fountain, smash it to bits? Jake didn't know, but he wasn't scared. He leaned back in his chair and grinned. "Gotcha," he said softly. That camera wasn't just for show, it was recording everything. Karen had no idea she was being watched. Jake saved the video and set his phone down, feeling like he'd just won a prize. The game was about to change, and Karen didn't even know it. The next morning, Karen acted like nothing had happened. She was back on Jake's lawn, yelling about the fountain again. "This thing has to go," she shouted, waving her clipboard. Jake just nodded, his smile a little bigger than usual. "Sure thing, Karen," he said, but inside he was thinking about that video. He didn't tell her what he knew, not yet. He wanted to wait for the perfect moment. Karen kept talking, saying she'd get the city to shut him down, but Jake wasn't worried. He had proof now, and he was starting to figure out that Karen's anger wasn't just about the fountain. There was something else going on, something she didn't want anyone to know. The neighborhood was buzzing with whispers. Some people were starting to wonder if Karen was going too far. Tommy's mom, Mrs. Lee, told her friend that she thought the